The story begins on a cold morning in downtown Los Angeles, the kind of morning where the sun hides behind gray clouds and the streets glisten with yesterday's rain. A woman walks along the cracked sidewalk, clutching the small hands of two children, one on each side, her hair pulled back hastily, her coat too thin for the chill. Her name is Rebecca Hayes. Once she had a house, a husband, a job. Now all she has are her two kids and $7 folded carefully inside her pocket, the last of what was once a savings account, the last piece of security she owns. She keeps moving because stopping means thinking and thinking means breaking. Rebecca wasn't always like this. She grew up in a small town in Ohio where her father worked at a car factory and her mother baked pies for the church fair. She studied communications, got a decent job, moved to California with dreams bigger than her bank account. She married Mark, a construction worker with kind eyes. They had two kids, Emma and Lucas. Life was ordinary but good until the factory Mark worked for shut down and one layoff turned into months of unpaid bills, then the rent notice, then the eviction. Rebecca remembers the day the landlord knocked on the door holding that white paper. She still hears the echo of the word notice, like it was a punishment. At first they thought it was temporary. They stayed in a motel for a week, then when the car was towed for unpaid tickets, they had nowhere left. Rebecca sat in the back of a diner that night holding her kids while they slept on her lap. She looked at the $7 she had left and whispered, "We're gonna be okay," even though she didn't believe it. She couldn't afford to not believe it. The next morning she went to a women's shelter, a gray building smelling of bleach, and hoped the woman at the desk gave her a clipboard and a blanket. They stayed there for 2 nights. The third night there were no beds left. The city was overflowing with stories like hers, invisible families hiding under overpasses, sleeping in cars, trying to keep their kids warm. Rebecca made a rule for herself: no matter what happened, she'd keep them clean, fed, and in school. She would not let them disappear into the streets. She sold her wedding ring for $40, bought school shoes for Emma and a second-hand backpack for Lucas. She told them to smile even when it hurt. Every morning she walked them to school pretending she was just another mom dropping her kids off before work. After they went inside, she'd sit on the curb with her old laptop, hoping to find Wi-Fi. She'd search for jobs, for shelters, for anything she could do, but addresses required addresses. And she didn't have one. Sometimes she'd cry quietly in the public library, hiding between shelves when no one was around. One afternoon she walked past a small cafe downtown. A sign in the window read, "Help wanted, dishwasher, no experience required." She hesitated. Her reflection in the glass showed a woman who looked older than she was, her eyes tired, her coat faded. But her kids needed her to try. She stepped inside and asked for the manager. A man named Carlos looked her over. He asked, "Do you have experience?" She said, "I can learn." He said, "The pay isn't much." She smiled and said, "Anything is enough." He handed her an apron. That night she washed dishes until midnight, her fingers raw but her heart steady. With her first paycheck she bought socks for her kids and a notebook. She started writing in it every night, not about pain but about goals: a home by next year, a real bed for each of them, a birthday cake for Emma. She titled the first page Hope, because it was the only thing she had that couldn't be taken. Weeks turned into months. Rebecca worked every shift. She could sometimes 2 jobs: cafe in the morning, cleaning offices at night. She kept her kids in school, took them to the park on Sundays. They laughed on swings, even though they didn't have a home. Yet she taught them to say thank you for small things: for a hot meal, for the library Wi-Fi, for the rain that washed their clothes outside. A kind teacher at the kids' school noticed their situation one day and quietly slipped Rebecca a note that said, "If you ever need help, call me." That note led to a connection with a community center that offered transitional housing. Within 2 weeks, Rebecca and her kids moved into a tiny studio with 1 bed and 1 table. It wasn't much, but it had a lock on the door, and that felt like a mansion. That night she sat on the floor watching her kids sleep and whispered to herself, $7 to a home, we're getting there. But survival wasn't the end. She wanted more. She wanted to rebuild her life. She started taking online courses in marketing at night, free ones from community colleges, using the cafe's Wi-Fi. After shifts she watched videos on branding, learned about small business tools. One morning while cleaning offices she noticed how companies wasted money on simple marketing flyers. She thought, "I could do this cheaper." She started offering to redesign flyers for small businesses using free design tools on her laptop. She charged $20 per job. Soon word spread. Local shops began calling her. She named her service Bright Start Designs, because every small business deserved a bright start just like she did. The extra income helped her rent a small 2-bedroom apartment. Emma got her own bed. Lucas painted stars on his wall. Rebecca bought a couch secondhand from a thrift store. She cried the day it was delivered, not because of what it was, but because of what it meant. She had rebuilt something from nothing. A year later, she quit her dishwashing job to run her small business full-time. She hired 2 other single moms she met at the shelter. She paid them fairly. She told them, "I don't care where you come from, I care where you're going." Her business grew from flyers to full marketing plans, then to social media management. She never forgot the nights she had nothing. So she made it her rule to donate 10% of her profit to women's shelters. One afternoon, she was invited to speak at a local event called Women Who Rise. She stood in front of a small crowd, hands shaking, her voice soft. She said, "I once had $7 in my pocket and 2 kids to feed. I thought that was the end. But it was actually the beginning." She looked at her children sitting in the front row, their eyes shining, and said, "If you ever feel like you've lost everything, remember that love and hope weigh nothing but can carry you anywhere." The crowd stood up applauding, not because she was famous, but because they saw themselves in her. Years passed. Her business expanded online. She had clients across states. She bought a small house in the same neighborhood where she once slept in her car. The local news covered her story, from homeless to hope. The mother who built a future with $7. Her kids grew up strong, kind, grounded. Emma went to college studying social work. Lucas wanted to become an architect. Rebecca said, "I want to build homes with him someday, real ones for families who need them." In 2023, she started a foundation called the $7 Promise, dedicated to helping single mothers restart their lives with microgrants for housing and job training. She said, "I was given a chance, now I want to give others one too." The foundation grew fast, funded by people who had once read her story online. She became a symbol not of struggle, but of starting over. In interviews, she always downplays the hero label. She says, "I'm not brave, I was just a mom who refused to give up because my kids deserved better." Sometimes at night, she still sits by her window sipping tea, remembering that first morning on the sidewalk. She still carries a folded $7 bill in her wallet, as a reminder of where she began. She says, "It's not about the money, it's about the moment I decided to fight for us." Her story became a viral documentary. Millions watched, cried, and felt hope again. One comment read, "I watched this with my daughter, and she said, 'Mommy, that's what love looks like.' And maybe that's what it really was, love, raw, relentless, and unbreakable. Because courage isn't loud, sometimes it's just a mother whispering to her children, 'We're gonna be okay,' and meaning it even when she doesn't know how." Months turned into years, and the world around Rebecca began to recognize her not just as the woman who rose from nothing, but as the mother who refused to stay silent. She would often wake up early before the sun, her house quiet, her kids asleep. She'd walk to the kitchen, make coffee, and stare at the small photo magnet on her refrigerator. It was a picture of the old shelter she once lived in. Below it were 3 words written in marker, "Never forget." She never could, because forgetting meant losing the fire that kept her alive. She ran her foundation, the $7 Promise, with that same hunger that once drove her through nights of fear. Every story she heard from new mothers who reached out reminded her of her own past. There was a woman in Texas who sent an email saying, "I have $5 and a dream. Can you help?" Rebecca wired her $100 and wrote back, "I started with 7. Make yours count." That single gesture spread across social media. Thousands shared it, and donations poured in. The movement was now bigger than one person. It was a wave of mothers lifting each other. But success brought pressure. Rebecca worked long hours, meetings, interviews, managing the foundation, overseeing campaigns. Sometimes she felt the same exhaustion she did when she worked double shifts. But this time it was different. This time she was building something that mattered. One evening, her son Lucas found her asleep at the kitchen table, surrounded by papers. He placed a blanket over her shoulders and whispered, "Mom, you did it." She opened her eyes, half awake, and said, "No, son, we're still doing it." Every month she visited shelters across different states. She'd sit with mothers, hold their babies, listen to their stories. Sometimes she didn't say much, she just listened. And that was enough, because when someone truly listens, it feels like hope. One mother told her, "You don't know what it means to see you here." Rebecca smiled and said, "Oh, I do. I've been where you are. That's why I'm here." The foundation began offering job training programs, microloans, and daycare support for single moms who wanted to work. She launched a partnership with local colleges, offering scholarships for women who had dropped out to raise children. She often said education saved me even when I had no classroom. She meant the lessons of life learned on sidewalks and in shelters. In 2024, the $7 Promise received national recognition. She was invited to speak at a conference in Washington, D.C. It was her first time flying since everything happened. She sat by the window as the plane took off, looking down at the city lights, each one a reminder of 1,000 unseen stories. She closed her eyes, whispered a quiet thank you, and thought of that first night in the diner years ago, when all she had was $7 and a promise to her kids. At the conference, she stood on stage in front of hundreds of people, lights bright, cameras flashing. But she wasn't nervous. She began speaking softly, saying, "I'm not a politician or a CEO. I'm just a mom who was tired of saying someday. I started with $7 and 2 hungry kids, and hoped that was all. And it was enough." The room went silent. People leaned forward. Her voice cracked slightly as she said, "Every number on a spreadsheet, every statistic we talk about, that's a person, a story, a child, waiting to be seen. And that's why we're here, not to fix the world overnight, but to make sure no mother has to tell her child, we have nowhere to go tonight." The crowd stood and clapped, many crying. It wasn't a speech, it was a confession, a testimony. Later that evening, a journalist approached her and asked, "Do you ever wish you could forget those years?" She smiled and said, "No, because those years built me. They made me see what matters. I wouldn't trade that pain for anything because it taught me how to love fiercely." Back home, her daughter Emma was now in her early 20s, studying social work. Inspired by her mother's journey, she volunteered at shelters during weekends. One day, she came home excited and said, "Mom, guess what? I got accepted into the state's youth empowerment program." Rebecca hugged her tight and whispered, "You're the dream." I worked for Lucas, was now a teenager, tall, quiet, always sketching buildings. He showed her a drawing once. It was of a house with wide windows and flowers on the porch. He said, "This is for people like us who need to start over." She looked at it, and tears filled her eyes. Rebecca often said to her kids, "Remember, we build from broken things. That's what makes us stronger." She never wanted them to forget where they came from, but also never to be trapped by it. In 2025, a storm hit the city, heavy rains flooding shelters, destroying supplies. Rebecca immediately organized a relief drive. Within 24 hours, she raised thousands of dollars online. She drove herself through flooded streets, delivering blankets and food. When someone asked why she didn't just send volunteers, she said, "Because I promised I'd never watch from the sidelines again." She waded through water, handing out meals, hugging women who were shivering. She felt the same cold she once knew too well, and it reminded her why she started. News outlets covered her efforts again, calling her the mother who built miracles from pennies. But she always redirected the attention, saying, "This isn't about me, it's about every woman who refuses to give up, because she has little eyes watching her." As the years passed, her story became part of school lessons and motivational talks. She never got used to the fame, but she used it wisely. She launched community programs across 10 cities and later opened transitional homes under her foundation's name, each one called Hope House. Inside every building by the front door hung a small framed bill, a $7 note with her handwriting underneath, "Never underestimate what little can do." By 2028, the $7 Promise had helped over 10,000 families find stability. Rebecca's hair was turning gray, now her kids grown. She still woke up before dawn, still carried that same fire inside. She often sat on her porch at night, a cup of tea in hand, thinking about life. She would look at the stars and whisper, "Thank you." But life has a way of testing the strong. Even after everything, in 2029, Rebecca's health began to fail. Years of sleepless nights and endless stress caught up with her. Doctors told her to rest, but she didn't listen. She said there's still work to do. One night, while reviewing reports, she felt dizzy and fainted. Her children rushed her to the hospital. The doctor said she needed to slow down. She smiled weakly and said, "I can't, there's a woman out there waiting for me." When she returned home, her daughter Emma sat beside her, holding her hand, and said, "Mom, you've done enough. You gave us everything." Rebecca looked at her and whispered, "No, sweetie, I gave us a beginning. Now it's your turn to build the rest." In 2030, Rebecca officially passed the leadership of the $7 Promise to her daughter Emma. During the ceremony, she spoke softly to the crowd, saying, "If one woman with $7 can start a movement, imagine what millions of us can do together." She paused, her eyes wet, but her smile unshaken, and said, "Love built this, nothing else." The crowd rose to their feet, clapping as Emma embraced her mother. That moment was more than a transition, it was a legacy passing from one generation to the next. In the years that followed, Rebecca stepped back from daily work, spending her time writing a book about her journey. It wasn't about fame, it was about truth. She wanted her children, and every mother who read it, to know that despair doesn't mean defeat. She titled it, $7 in Hope. The same words she once whispered in the dark. That book became a bestseller not because of marketing, but because every page felt real, raw, and full of heart. In the final chapter, she wrote, if you ever find yourself standing in the rain holding your children, wondering how you'll make it, just take one step, even if you can't see the path, because every miracle starts with one act of faith. Her last public appearance was in 2032 at the opening of another Hope House. She stood with her daughter, her son, her team all around her. She was older, thinner, but still glowing. She looked at the crowd and said, I used to dream of a home for my kids. Today I dream of a world where every child has one. As the sun set behind her, she held her kids close, whispering the same words she did years ago, we're gonna be okay. And this time she knew it was true. That night she sat on her porch once again, the city lights flickering in the distance, her $7 bill framed on the wall beside her. She smiled softly and said to herself, it was never about the money, it was about the promise, because hope doesn't cost a thing. Her story didn't end there, it lived on in every woman she inspired, every child she helped, every family that found warmth because one mother refused to stop believing. And somewhere tonight another mother might be sitting under the same sky, clutching a few crumpled bills, whispering a quiet prayer. Maybe she'll hear Rebecca's story. Maybe she'll believe that she too can start again. Maybe she'll find her strength, because that's how change begins, not in boardrooms or speeches, but in the hearts of women who love fiercely and rise anyway.